Today, we're going to create some adorable little love letters that are perfect for sending to someone special or even just to brighten a friend's day and send encouragement. Hi, everyone. I'm Mindy Eggen, and welcome to my channel. The stamp set I pulled out to work with today is All My Heart. I just absolutely love this little mouse with the balloon, and I'm going to keep my card front fairly simple when it comes to stamping. So I'm placing my stamps, plus there's two sets of hearts on that stamp set as well. I'm using white 80-pound cardstock, and I'm going to stamp them in the Lawn Fawn jet black ink because I plan on coloring them with alcohol markers. Now, since I did stamp the images twice, I am going to just quickly go over it with a heat tool to dry that ink, and that way I'm not risking any smearing when it comes to coloring with my markers. The markers that I'm using today are the Olo markers, and for my mouse, I picked out 04.6, 04.3, and 04.1. So I'm starting with that darkest shade, which is the 04.6, and using that to create my shadow areas on my mouse, which is going to be on the right-hand side. And then I just blend it out with the remaining colors. For the balloon, I'm going to do this in reds. I wasn't 100% sure what color I was going with for my card front, and I thought red would be a safe bet because it pretty much matches anything. So for the reds, I am using our zero point 0.6, our zero point 0.5, and our zero point 0.4. And then I did bring in the R zero point 0.3 as a little highlight. I'm going to use those same markers for the two groupings of hearts as well. These would also be really cute colored up in rainbow colors just to add a bit of variety. Once I have the coloring done, I'm lining up the coordinating die, holding it down with Post-it tape and die cutting them out. I'm going to be using the little letter die set. So I'm taking the envelope die and I was planning on die cutting it out of raspberry cardstock and ballet slippers cardstock. There's also kind of that calligraphy pen or that fountain pen in there, and there's two pieces to that. So for the main body of that fountain pen, I'm going to do that out of a silver metallic. And then for the actual barrel, I am doing some black glitter cardstock. After I have all the die cutting done, I am going to add the barrel of the pen to the actual kind of base piece. And I am just doing that with my Lawn Fawn glue tube and my tweezers. You can see I am working on a type of grip mat. It's just a silicone mat that I like to kind of glue my pieces on because then it's easier to clean up the glue from this surface. For the envelopes, there are some score lines on there, so we can create these as a sealed envelope or leaving the top flap open. I'm going to leave the top flap open so I can put a letter in them. I'm just going to go through and fold along all of those score lines and then reinforce that fold with a bone folder. Now, off on the side, I did take it and kind of measure it to see how wide it would be. And then I trimmed a couple pieces of cardstock down to fit inside of there. And then as far as the length, it kind of just varies depending on how much you want sticking out and how long your message is going to be. But right now, I'm kind of getting an idea how that would look tucked in, which I think is super cute to kind of have them pulled out at an angle, like there's a little love letter in there. And I thought the Love Poems stamp set would be absolutely perfect to stamp a little message on here, like there's a little typed out love letter. So I picked out a sentiment and I'm placing that towards the top of this little piece of cardstock. So that's going to be the piece that's for sure hanging out of the envelope. I'm stamping this in the black licorice ink. And I'm just kind of getting an idea how much I want kind of sticking out of the envelope. And I do have quite a bit of room left yet. So I'm going to stamp some additional images on there as well. Now, here's another one I'm also going to be pulling in. I did use images from Love Poems and also the stamp set You're Just My Type, which has one of them has a cute little typewriter, which would be really cute with this set as well. There's also like these little lines, like it looks like you typed out a little message. So I'm adding that on both of these pieces of cardstock since I did have that room once they are peeking out of the envelope. So after I have my sentiments all stamped out, I'm going to start adhering these to the envelope. And again, like I said, I wanted that top flap to be open. I'm going to add just a little bit of tape runner behind the actual letter and then stick it in there so it's kind of angled coming out. And I'm going to use tape runner to seal it. Now, I am going to come back to this a little later on to seal that a little bit better. But for right now, I was using tape runner, which is good if you kind of need a little bit of wiggle room to move things around. Then I'm going to start working on a background for this to create kind of a fun little scene. I'm going to use a piece of 80-pound weight cardstock cut to 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. I'm adding some repositionable tape to the back just to secure that down to my glass work surface. I'll be using the brick stencil, just kind of lining it up, making sure my brick lines are straight going across the card front. And I'm holding that down with the Hedgehogs washi tape. I love using the washi tape to hold my stencils down because it's really cute to look at. So for ink blending, I am using ballet slippers, going just really haphazardly. Maybe some areas will be a little darker than others. And then once I remove this, I really love that. And I think it's such a fun look to use a colored ink in the background. I still wanted to add a little bit more to this, so I am bringing in the Lots of Hearts stencil, which is actually a two-piece layering stencil, and I am using the ballet slippers once again, but this time I'm coming in a little bit heavier handed, so I'm applying a lot more ink than I did using the brick. I was loving how this was coming out, but you can see where there are some gaps. At first, I wasn't going to use that second layer of the stencil, but then I decided I really wanted to have that background filled in. So I am lining that up in the open areas of my background, coming in once again with that ballet slippers and just a little bit of a heavy hand. Now it's going to look pretty dark at first, but the inks will dry back. So now that I have kind of the main components of my card front ready, I can start kind of arranging it and how it's going to look. This was the basic design idea I had in the beginning, but after I did the ink blending, I kind of lost the envelope that was die cut out of ballet slipper. It just was kind of blending in too much of the background. And I had one off on the side die cut out of guava cardstock, so I decided to use that instead. I did also notice that my envelope flaps were trying to pop out on me, so I'm going to come in and use the liquid glue instead. But like I said, the Tombow tape runner was really great in this particular case because I changed my mind. But if I really want to seal it down, I'm going to be using the glue tube. So I added the glue for both envelopes, and then I'm going to just set something heavy on it for a few minutes and let that really adhere together. The skinny sentiment that I have there, I thought about stamping right onto the card front using maybe a black ink, but again, I was worried it would get lost in that background, so I decided to heat emboss it instead. I have a piece of black licorice cardstock that I conditioned with an anti-static powder tool, and then I'm stamping the sentiment actually 3 times using the Yeti ink. I'll then sprinkle on some white embossing powder, tapping off any of the excess back into my container. And I'm going to warm up my heat tool really well. This is an embossing gun. And then once it's warmed up, I can take it to that embossing powder and melt it. I wanted this to be a pretty skinny strip on my card front, so I'm going to use a paper trimmer to trim that out and get really close to the letters. I'm also going to take kind of the rest of that black cardstock and trim out some skinny pieces out of that as well. What I like to do when I have skinny sentiment strips like this is I like to layer cardstock behind the sentiment versus using foam squares. So for that, I am just using my glue tube and then I can just trim off any excess with my scissors. Now I have all the components for my card front. I can start putting everything together. Now I have it just kind of laid out the way I want it to go. And I started with my mouse and that cute little balloon. I swear the heart balloon is just what really makes that kind of come together. I added foam squares behind my mouse. And then I have my sentiment here that I just finished up. I'm adding liquid glue to the back of that, and that's kind of getting tucked over by the balloon and the mouse. And I'm just using, again, that liquid glue to adhere that because it already has dimension built up behind it. Then I'm coming in with the hearts. I am popping these up with foam squares as well. And I'm kind of using the hearts as like an embellishment. So I was trying to be mindful of where I placed them. Now, for the envelopes, I kind of glued them together in one corner so that way I knew the arrangement that I wanted them to be in. And then I flipped it over and added foam squares to the back of those. Then I just have my fountain pen left. So I am going to just attach that with the liquid glue. No foam squares needed because it's pretty popped up with the envelopes. And that's going to finish off this project. So even though there's a lot of pink, there's a lot of hearts, it could definitely be a Valentine's themed, but I think it's just also a really good encouragement scent. And I think it's super colorful and cheerful. Hope you all enjoyed today's card project and feel inspired to create. Thank you all so much for joining me. If you're interested in any of the supplies I'm using today, I will have them linked down below in the video description and over on my blog.